Here's how you should approach buying a home versus an investment property. Over the last 5 years as a licensed realtor here in North Jersey, I have encountered all kinds of clients with different needs. Some actually choose to continue renting because they have a certain lifestyle in mind and want to buy investment properties for rental purposes. Others want to buy a primary residence, whether it's their first condo or their first single family home. And there's a third category that wants to house hack, right? Become investors and homeowners at the same time. There are some very important differences in terms of the mindset and the way you approach this decision. And in this video, I want to break those down for you. So let's start with buying a home. So most people, when they think about buying a home, they're going to think about external factors and internal factors. Let's start with external. Number one, you're going to zero in on the towns you're considering living in. And within each town, you're going to probably consider different neighborhoods. Right? Some towns might have vastly different neighborhoods. Other towns might be a little bit more homogeneous, where it makes little difference which part of town you're in. But that's still an important decision point. Another one, especially post-COVID, is the commute time and commute type. I have clients who say, I hate buses. I only want to be in towns that are commutable by train. Well, that'll narrow things down for you, right? They might say, Max, I want my commute to Midtown Manhattan to be less than 45 minutes. That's certainly going to narrow it down further. Other external factors, if they're planning to start a family or already have kids, they might have questions about what are my daycare options. If the kids are older, what is the school situation there? And obviously that's something you should do your own research on, but schooling is going to be a factor, the availability of daycare, commute time. Also things that we take for granted every day, like going to buy groceries, right? Going to the corner coffee shop, maybe going for a weekend brunch. Is there an option for a Friday date night? So all these things will be the external factors you think about when choosing to buy a home or condo to live in. There's also internal considerations. Is this house big enough for your needs? Especially if you have a longer time horizon, right? Can we grow in this house if you're thinking of starting a family? Is the layout suitable to our needs? Does it have the amenities and the bells and whistles we're looking for? Like, for example, a washer dryer or a primary suite, right, with an ensuite bathroom, or maybe a private outdoor space like a balcony or terrace. And of course, if some of them are missing, is this something I can add, right? You can, in most cases, add a washer dryer if there's no laundry in the house currently. Other considerations will be number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. Is there a finished basement, or can I finish one? What is the parking situation like? So these are all factors that are specific to the property itself. Other considerations, and I think this applies more so when you're looking to buy a home versus an investment property, is, frankly, do I see myself living in this area at least for a few years? Right? Yes, people move, so I don't like the term forever home, because I think for most people, no home is a forever home, with some rare exceptions, right? How many people do you know in your life, in your family, maybe your friends' families, that have lived in the same home their entire lives, right? Very few, especially more recently. Generally, people move on average, I think it's 7 years. Can you see yourself living there for the foreseeable future? And part of that decision is also, do you like the area? Have you done your research on the demographics, right? You want to know where you end up, because you probably would want to get along with your neighbors. You probably would want to walk around your town, right? Visit the local businesses. Even things like the politics of the area might play a role, right? If you are relocating to, let's say, the New Jersey or the New York City metro area from a part of the country that's very conservative, maybe Montclair may not be the best fit for you, right? Unless you want to surround yourself with very liberal neighbors, typically. On the flip side, if you come from a very liberal family, you may not want to end up in a part of Jersey that is mostly very conservative, right? Because these are all considerations when thinking about where to live, right? It's not just the commute and how close the grocery store is and where the closest gym is and how many bedrooms or bathrooms. It's also, can I see myself living in this town and specifically this neighborhood for the foreseeable future? So that's on the buying a home side of things. What about buying an investment property? There is some overlap. In both cases, you will probably think about safety, commutability and proximity to things like grocery stores, local businesses, cafes, maybe gyms, right? But there are some factors that will not play a role in your decision as compared to buying a home. For example, you may not care as much about the layout and the number of bedrooms and bathrooms or some of the bells and whistles because you will not be the one living there. Right? You may not care about the school and daycare availability as much because you will not be the one living there. Of course, that might come into consideration anyway, depending on the kinds of tenants you're targeting, but you're gonna approach it in a different way. So here are the key ways I think about buying investment properties, both as an investor myself and also as someone who's helped many clients buy their first and next investment properties. So number one, is this a town and location where I think I can get good tenants? What do I mean by good tenants? People with a reasonably good credit score and reasonably good income that can cover 3 times the annual rent. People that I think will stay here for a while, because frankly, having a turnover every year could be costly and annoying. Sometimes good tenants are like the best tenants, right? The ones that stay for a while, pay the rent on time every month, and people that you don't have to chase for rent and don't call you often at midnight with problems. Those are the tenants you want to keep. So I want to make sure that this is an area that has a big enough pool of qualified, stable tenants that would want to A, rent my apartment or my client's apartment, and B, stay there to avoid an annual turnover situation. Now, not all turnover is bad, but generally speaking, you reduce your costs if you can hold on to your good tenants and issue them maybe reasonable rent increases adjusted for inflation, right? Which is kind of my approach. Number two, is this area commutable to New York City? Because frankly, I think the best investment prospects in New Jersey are the ones that are close enough to Manhattan because you will attract the biggest chunk of the tenant pool will be people that are probably commuting to the city, at least when you talk about North Jersey, right? I'm not talking about the shore or South Jersey or western section of the state. Other considerations, obviously safety profile is always important. You want to understand and do your research on the kinds of people that are living in the area already. Are there a lot of professionals? Are there a lot of blue-collar workers? Are there a lot of teachers and nurses and contractors? Do you see parks and people walking outside? Is there a small downtown where people can go shopping or go for a local meal? These are all things I analyze when I decide where to invest and where not to invest, right? You probably want to stay away from isolated areas that are sparsely populated because it'll also limit your ability to rent the property and generate solid income. Speaking of income, something that is top of mind for me with any investment property is my expected return, right? Ultimately, why are you buying the investment property? To benefit from it financially, right? Which is, by the way, a critical difference when thinking about buying a home, right? When I'm thinking about buying a home, I'm primarily thinking of it from the point of view of it's a quality of life decision, right? This is where I will be living with my family. With an investment property, it's can I generate a good enough return where I'm happy about this purchase 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Yes, I mean, with a home, I also eventually, let's say if I decide to sell, I want to be able to profit from my purchase. But that is not, for me at least, not my primary consideration because ultimately it's where I live, it's the roof over my family's heads, right? With an investment property, I'm not tied to it emotionally, right? It's not a place I'm calling home. It should be a stable and rewarding investment for me, right? Both from a cash flow point of view on a monthly and annual basis, but also in the long run from, cashing out, right? One day when I decide to sell. So ROI, return on investment, is a very important consideration when thinking about investment properties and something that most homeowners are not necessarily thinking about, right? It's not like you're planning to sell your primary residence next year or necessarily even 5 years from now. So that's an important difference. And on that topic, you have to break it down further, right? So you have to think, what is my expected rent in this area? What is my monthly mortgage payment going to look like? And what's my cash flow going to be, right? What's my free cash flow going to be on an annual basis? And obviously, cash purchase versus using a mortgage will have a slightly different calculation. But the key term in real estate is cap rate, and maybe I'll do a separate video on what cap rate means and calculating rates of return. But for the purposes of this video, the point is you should approach an investment property as first and foremost an investment, whereas a primary residence should be first and foremost a quality of life decision. Another important difference is insurance. So obviously as a homeowner, you have to get home insurance as well, but some insurance providers will not offer insurance if it's an investment property in certain areas, if it's a certain age and has a certain number of units. For example, I own a 3-unit property in Bayonne and a 2-unit property in Bayonne, and it was harder to get insurance for the 3-unit property because I'm not living there, and it's, both properties are from 1920, and insurance providers are becoming much more conservative, which properties they underwrite policies for and which ones they don't. And I had a hard time getting the 3-family covered. And it's always going to cost you more to cover an investment property from an insurance standpoint. Another factor is this investment property currently in a flood zone? And if so, how much is that going to cost? And if it's not currently in a flood zone, is it near a flood zone, right? Because 2 years from now or 5 years from now, the flood zone can be expanded or remapped based on the latest data, and suddenly it will be in a flood zone and you'll have to get flood insurance. Of course, the same applies to buying a primary residence, but generally the premiums are going to be cheaper because insurance providers think it's a safer bet to insure a house where the policyholder is actually living in. So just something else for you to keep in mind when thinking about both a home and an investment property. Definitely do your research, build a team, right? You want a great agent on your side, you want a great lender on your side, you want a great lawyer on your side, and you probably also should reach out to a great insurance professional. And if you don't know one, ask your agent or ask your attorney. The insurance professional will give you an idea of what kind of insurance costs you can expect, whether you decide to go the primary residence route or buying an investment property route or house hacking, right? You still need to shop around for insurance. And that could be its own video too, but don't try to get the cheapest policy, get the smartest policy, right? The one that gives you the most protection, which ultimately will give you peace of mind at night, whether it's the roof over your head or the roof over your tenants' heads. I know I've given you a lot of information in this video, so if I were to summarize it in one sentence, it would be this. Buying a home is first and foremost a quality of life decision, while buying an investment property is a investment decision, right? A rate of return decision. So to me, those are two very different things, and you should factor those into your own decision-making process. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.